Hey there, everybody. Great to see you again. Thanks for tuning in and watching my channel. So you may have noticed that there's been a little bit of a name change, and I'll go into that at the end of the video. But for right now, I will say that up on my website, which has been renamed, the modern term is rebranded. It's a name change. I have a new blog post called Making Your Mark. And I'd like to go over that today. So the URL of the website has changed as well. In the banner to my YouTube channel, if you click on that link, it's been updated. My new domain name is, and I'll put it here somewhere. My new domain name is etmartin.net. Much easier to remember, so that's great. And again, I'll go into what precipitated this major upheaval at the end of this video. But let's go over my blog post because I think it's something that needs to be talked about. It's more philosophical about photography than it is technical. So, and some people appreciate that, some people don't, but whatever. So when I first started out in photography, one of the things everybody was telling me is like, you need to develop your own personal style. And I thought that was great, and I realized right away that that was an important thing to do, but I didn't have a clue as to what my own personal style was. And I don't think that your own personal style is something that, and this is gleaned from years of experience, I don't think it's something that you choose. I think it chooses you. And so at least that's the way it worked for me. I went out and I was thinking about what I wanted to do, but when it came to actually shooting stuff, now there are some people out there that say, okay, this is going to be my personal style, and they go out and shoot it, and I guess they're successful at it. I don't know. I don't know any of those people, but I'm sure they're out there because human beings are amazing. But in my particular instance, and I think this will resonate with a lot of you, is I said, okay, great, I'll look for it if I see it on my way. And what happened was I went out and I started photographing stuff that interested me. And in that process, over the course of a few years, yeah, my own style did develop. And I can sort of recognize it now. My landscape photographs, the really good ones, tend to people, I've gotten this comment a lot at art fairs and whenever the general public is exposed to the work that I do. A lot of times they say it looks like a painting. And I don't know why that is, but that's what my work tends to look like, or that's the comment I get a lot. So I took a leap of faith, and I just started photographing the things that interested me, and a personal style developed. So I think the real problem is, and then of course is the question of looking for your personal style or trying to find it. And I think one of the problems one of the things that compounds the problem of finding it is the fact that you have in your mind, the photographer has in the photographer's mind, all of the work that the photographer does, not just the end final selects that are chosen to be representative of that work. So in other words, like if I take 5,000 photographs a year, which would be a lot for me, I might get 10 that I personally select to represent those 5,000. When I'm done at the end of the year and I have those 10 photographs in front of me, there's usually kind of a coherent look to all of them. Okay, and that's my personal style. The problem is in my head, I've got the 10,000 photographs or the 5,000 photographs that didn't make the cut. And so you can't see the trees, the 10 trees, because the 5,000 trees that make up the forest are in the way. So it's the old catch-22. Until you get to the point where you have your 10 selects out of 5,000 images, you're not going to see any coherent style. Another thing back in the day that made the problem worse was the fact that we were shooting film, and it was a slow process, and it was also amazingly expensive at the time, all things considered. if you want to stifle your creativity, just go out and say to yourself, I'm going to photograph in my personal style. I think that's the number one way to absolutely throw a wet blanket on any creative process. To say, okay, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to make my epic work. Go out and make some work and then see if it's epic, is what I would say. I've seen that so many times in workshops that I've led, where people, they know that their photographs, that for the weekend or for the week that they're in the workshop, that their photographs are going to be critiqued and judged by their peers, by people who are keenly interested and enthusiastic about photography. And that changes their mindset, right? When they're out photographing for their own personal pleasure, which is the best scenario, best case scenario, or they're photographing to try to create something epic or something grand or something that realizes their vision, then their creativity just kind of flows. But if they know that the end product is going to be critiqued and reviewed and the pressure is on, they just tend to wander around aimlessly, overlooking things that attract them. And so the lesson to that is which I've learned, is when I'm walking down a trail or I'm out in nature or I'm out photographing, if something catches my eye, if something piques my curiosity, if I say, oh, that's interesting, even subconsciously, I've trained myself to stop and at least give it a second thought, at least explore it. Unless, of course, I'm on the way to something specific that the timing is critical on, like the sunrise at Stanley Lake. If something catches my eye, it would have to be immediately obvious that this is more epic than what I'm headed for. But if I have the time and the luxury to stop, I will at least stop and explore and say, okay, can I work with some of these elements? Not unfortunately, but the thing is I find if you have the time, it's important to set up your tripod, take your time, compose your initial shot of whatever it was that caught your eye, but always make sure to look around you. Because I would say over the course of my photographic pursuits, 90% of my best keepers were images where something caught my eye. I set up my camera, I took that shot, it really wasn't that interesting, but just off to the right or off to the left or behind me, there was something that, just became one of my named images, one of my shots that I really enjoy. So I think what it is when the creative process is happening, the things that catch your eye aren't specifically what's going to be the end result of your vision, but subconsciously you're taking everything in, and it's really worth stopping to. If you don't stop, you'll never know, right? So making art. People don't realize this because in the pursuit of their technical capabilities in photography or technical proficiency in photography, they get lost in the technical. But when the technical becomes transparent, when you don't think about the technical and you just implement what you want, you're actually playing the instrument of your camera. That's when the emotional response that you've had to the scene that made you stop, either on a conscious or subconscious level, has the potential to come through in your image, which is what this is all about, which is what making an image that resonates with the viewer is all about. The viewer is not resonating to the scene that was in front of you, to the technical representation, informational representation of what's in front of you. The scene, the part of the photograph that's resonating with the viewer is the 100 conscious or 100 or more conscious or subconscious choices that the individual personal photographer has put into every image before that image got to the point where the viewer is looking at the photograph. Okay? And that's where the art either happens or it doesn't, right? Photography is great photography speaks in metaphor. It's not just informational. So, I mean, your camera manual is not literature. Your camera manual is a technical manual that's trying to give you, either in a good way or a bad way, the necessary information that you need to operate your camera. But you don't read it for pleasure, although some photographers do. But a lot of photographers just go to the manual when the camera's not doing what they want it to do, and they're trying to figure out how to make it behave. But it's not Romeo and Juliet. It's not Shakespeare, okay? Romeo and Juliet, Shakespeare spoke in metaphor and meter. And you know, Shakespeare, like Romeo and Juliet, is a love story, but it's also a tragedy. It's the human condition boiled down in the crucible of his prose that speaks and resonates to generations, even after 400 years, of the human condition of love and anguish and pain. It's the emotion in the words, okay? It's the difference between what light through yonder window breaks. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Versus Juliet is like the sun at dawn. One's informational, and if you don't know what the other one is, then you don't get it. So I'm just saying. Or as I believe Pablo Picasso said about Van Gogh, and he might have just said this in general, but I think he said it about Van Gogh. Most painters take the sun and reduce it to a yellow blob. Van Gogh takes a yellow blob and transforms it into the sun. So, and not all photographs resonate with all viewers. I personally like a lot of the work of Michael Kenna. There's a lot of people and a lot of photographers who think it's just boring and tired and cliche, etc. But there are a few images of his that resonate with me. Not all of them and not most of them. But you know, you're only as good as your best work. Okay? So there's an example. A lot of landscape photography deals with finding order in chaos. I had a workshop participant, and the guy was actually an electrical engineer. And he was an interesting guy. And he loved photography. So he took a workshop with me, and we were in a particularly overgrown area of a river up on Mount St. Helens where the workshop was taking place. And he said to me, he said, you know, I see this scene and I can tell there's something here because you stopped, first of all. He said, but I can't, how do you separate the signal from the noise? Which was a great way to put it and really cut down to the chase. And it's not something that's easy to explain. But what it was easy to do was I set up my camera. It was a 4x5 view camera at the time. And I worked at the composition, you know, for a minute or two. And it kind of popped for me. And I said, hey, take a look at this. Okay. And he looked at it. And he goes, oh, I see. Okay. All right. Now, what that process is you see the chaos, but your mind, consciously or subconsciously, can tell that there might be something there. There might be some order. You set up your camera, you compose for what you think might be there, eliminating as much of the chaos as possible and emphasizing through shutter speed and technique and composition, aperture, depth of field, focus. Use all the tools at your command to emphasize what it is that caught your attention and de-emphasize the chaos, okay? The best images, your vision comes through. It doesn't happen every time, okay? The more you do it, the better you get at it, all right? But this goes back to a very, very deeply seated human primordial drive to assuage the fear that it's just all chaos, right? The reason I believe that a structured, simplified, ordered photograph of nature resonates with us as human beings is because it kind of speaks to that idea that there's a hidden pattern below the surface of the chaos that is actually order. And that resonates. So for me, those photographs seem to work the strongest. And am I consciously searching for that? No. As a matter of fact, I probably don't even articulate this too often to myself or anyone. But for this particular video, I thought it was important. So it's the search for the order among the chaos, which leads us to understand that for me, my landscape photography, my language of expression is an expression of omission. It's a reduction of chaos and an emphasis of order. And in that hidden pattern of order is a beauty. And that's what I'm subconsciously and potentially consciously trying to envision and encapsulate in my photography. Okay. So now let's go to the name change. What's in a name? I started out as a wedding photographer a long time ago doing subcontracting weddings, as a lot of you people know, or maybe not. And back in the 1990s, I had a really good friend named Brian Halliwell, who was a fashion glamour photographer in London in the 60s. He was the original Austin Powers, and he was quite a character. I did say his name was Brian Halliwell. Well, I put this ad in this local paper because I wanted to go out on my own doing wedding photography. So I put an ad in a local paper. It said Edward T. Martin Photography, weddings, blah, 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 and my phone number. And nobody called. Okay, I mean, some people called, but very few. And so during the week, I'd have coffee with Brian. Everybody called him Hal. Even his wife called him Hal because his name was Brian Halliwell. And I said to Hal, I said, you know, I put this ad in the paper, and it's not. He goes, well, Edward T. Martin, yeah, it's not really, you know, that great a name, is it? And I said, yeah, well, you know, it's the one I'm stuck with. And he said, he said, back in London, he said I had a trade name, and he said I used different names and things to see. A lot like John Wayne's real name was Marion Morrison, but his trade name, his movie star name, was John Wayne. So that gave me the idea, and we started fooling around with names. And I won't tell you what my middle name is, what the T stands for, but he used that and basically said, well, he said, you know, Edward Martin, you could be Martin Edwards, you know, something that rings. He said the T could be Thomas. He said, how about Edward Thomas? And he said Edward Thomas Photography, because his name, his trade name in London, he picked as his last name his brother's first name, which was Jason. So he was Hal Jason Photography in London. And he said, when I changed my name to Hal Jason Photography, it worked great. So make a long story short, I ran an ad in that newspaper the next month, and it was Edward Thomas Photography. And my phone started ringing. And I was like, well, you know, what the hey? So that's how the Edward Thomas came about. And it's sort of not even my name to a certain extent. So I have decided, because the time has come, to stop fooling around and to be the me that I want to be, and to be, so everybody, my friends call me E.T., okay? And so the name E.T. Martin more aligns with who I really am. So the time has come. This channel still only has about 750 subscribers. As we move on, I want to be who I am, and not some trade name from the 90s, because that's not important anymore. Okay. So now's the time. I'm being the me I want to be, and that's E.T. Martin. Martin being my real last name. So the website's E.T. Martin, the YouTube channel's E.T. Martin, the email's etmartinphoto@gmail.com, etmartin.net. Even the YouTube identifier is YouTube/C custom E.T. Martin. So I've got it all. E.T. Martin's a lot easier than Edward Thomas on the web, because Edward Thomas turns out was a poet in World War One, and he's very famous, and it's really hard to get Edward Thomas anything. So that's why I had to have Edward Thomas Photography, etc. But that was never my real name. So it's time to make the change and to be me. And I appreciate everybody coming along for the ride. How it really affects you is it really doesn't. Please subscribe. It's still me. You do have to change your bookmark for my website if you had the website bookmark. I wish it was a more colorful story. Not really. But I just want to be who I really am moving forward. As I get older, these things seem to matter to me. I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you listening to all that. And like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Trip coming up next week. Looking forward to it. Had a winter came back. I mean, we've had 2 or 3 inches of snow. It's down in the 20s again. This is ridiculous. The good news is that with it, it'll be over in a week. We'll be back up to 60 degrees just in time for our trip. Looking forward to it. Very excited about it. And we'll see you out there. Have a great one. Bye.